Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The shield, the shield. We back at you. We see Malcolm Rome over there, man. Hey, say hi to the people, Malcolm Rome.
What's good people? Let's get it tonight.
Yes, sir. So, Lim is out here sick. Keep him in your prayers, man. He under the weather. See, these Cali people don't know how to act, man. Little rain out here, little the temperature dropped one time. My man out there with some tissue, box of tissue, talking about some I'm sick. So pray for him, man. He ain't got that weird Midwest weather in us. In him, sorry. So look, we got a good one, man. We just gonna go on rock. Before we rock, we gotta go and kick it off, bro. What's going on in the world that you want to discuss? What's happening out here that you want to talk about, man?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now was just last night with the president speaking. He touched on a lot of different things. One of the things that I seen this morning was if you kill a police officer, they're putting the executive order for the death penalty.
Wow.
So, my only take on that is there better be some hard, concrete facts that that person that you put on that, injection chair is the person. You can't have no mishaps with that because you won't be able to bring that person back. So that's all. That's my take on that part. He touched on a lot of other stuff, but I won't touch on it tonight. But it's a lot of stuff. People better go pay attention to what's happening out here with the government right now, because it's going to touch some people's doorstep sooner than they're prepared for.
I love it. I love it. Anything else you want that's on your soul, on your mind? There's a lot going on in the sports world. It's a lot of stuff happening. Anything else is this tugging at you that you want to discuss that's happening right now in the world?
No, man. As far as I was just telling you guys earlier, as far as my schedule is changing, so unfortunately, this might be the last one that I'll be on regularly. But I'll just come back when my schedule permits. That's the biggest announcement tonight.
Wow, man. So hey, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep this thing rocking. We know Malcolm Rome will join if he was available and free. So that's good, man. We gonna keep it moving. So hey, since this the last free throw, the last dance, since this the last dance, man, hey, let's ask. The subject matter is guilt in relationships. Guilt in relationships. So we want to start off by breaking this down, right? So when you're in a relationship, nobody really deals with the whole significant part of guilt. Where does guilt come from? Why do you feel guilty? And so let's break down the whole premise of relationships, right? We'll talk about relationships and then we'll talk about guilt. Where's guilt coming from? How do we deal with guilt? We're gonna touch on a lot of stuff, man. And so not all of it gonna be biblically. I'm telling you right now, we're gonna hit on some of the Bible stuff, but a lot of stuff is factual, real life stuff. In fact, that's what I like to do. Let's talk about stuff that's applicable to everyday life. So what you got for us, Ron?
Well, I guess first and foremost, when you talk about guilt in the relationship, it's a lot of different angles we can touch on. But I think one of the main things when you think of guilt in a relationship, a lot of times it's not the cheating, it's not any of that. It's people feeling like the shoulda, coulda, woulda, the bargaining. Why did I stay so long? When you think of, in particular, the young ladies that have dated, individuals out there, let's say 8 years, 10 years, with no engagement, no proposal during that time frame. We're not talking about 18, to 28. We're talking about people who was dating individuals from maybe 28 to 40, 30 to 45, and up. And they feel like the years was wasted because the relationship never evolved to the next level. So that's one example in the relationship thing when it comes to relationships. Another level of guilt is Do you stay in it in the long haul, going through the whole counseling, only to end in divorce? There's several stories like that where people did, all of the counseling you could do, from the family counseling with the kids to the individual counseling to collective counseling, only to end, 5 years later, 3 years later, 2 months later. And so that's a detrimental thing for both parties. And so, yeah, I'll be ready to dive. I'm going to bring up some stats. Well, not really so much stats, but some of the different categories and reasons why people feel guilty.
Well, I looked up the when I did my research, I looked up the common causes of guilt in a relationship. One is hurting your partner. Number two, infidelity. Number three, dishonesty. Number four, feeling like a burden. Number five, thinking you don't do enough for your partner. And number six is misunderstanding your partner's feelings or motivations. That's what we have. So we'll start with the most common, right? And the most common I want to say is uh, infidelity. We just start there, right? So let's dive deep into this whole infidelity thing. And I'm not really I'm not a sexist. Let me just say that, Romy. And I know it's a difference, and we treat it differently from a man cheating from a woman cheating. And the only reason I threw that out there because I think more women are able to handle it emotionally differently than a man. I could be wrong, but from my personal experiences and the people that I know that if a woman steps out, it'll be a little harder for a man to be able to stick in it, forgive it, and mainly because that's something that's constantly uh, hovering over you. And not to say that's not for a female either, but all I can do is speak from a male's perspective. What do you think, Romy?
Yeah, we only can speak from a male's perspective, but I can say from what I hear on the female side when it comes to infidelity. We all know that for women to go there in the bedroom, mentally, they have to be there, and they have to be there emotionally. Men are the creatures who can be physical and not really have emotions attached and things like that when it comes to things. So it's kind of like, hey, she didn't mean anything to me. That's why you hear those type of sayings, because there was no love from the man standpoint. It was just what it was. And for the women, they know deep down that for them to go there, they had to be there mentally, they had to be there emotionally. So for that um, to happen to them, they feel betrayed. And once you feel betrayed, it's kind of like, how do I give myself back to this man in that way? How do I trust him again in that way, in that matter? And sometimes, some people can't bounce back from that. That's just the reality. I've one of the guys I knew back when I was back home. He was in a situation where he didn't even do anything physically. It was just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. What happened was he had a flat tire, and the young lady just so happened to see him coming down the road from work because they work together. So like, hey, I'm trying to get to this, over here to the tire shop so I can change it out because the donut I have, I don't want to put that on there. In the midst of him hopping in that car, guess who rides past? The wifey. And she sees him getting into that car and like, wait a minute, why would you get in the car with this female? You could have called me, type of thing. And just in the midst of that whole thing blew up, and it ended up being the demise of their relationship. And not one time did he ever, sleep with the young lady, but it was all of what it looked like. It was like, you see him getting in the car, and he didn't reach out to you first. He didn't get a chance to tell you what happened. Everything literally just happened in the spur of the moment like that. He's literally looking at the tire. The person pulls up. He didn't even have time to make the phone call. But yet it ended over, what should have, could have happened, and it didn't happen, but he didn't have the time for that in that moment. So it was one of those things like, wow, you know. So that's why I say you got to know your mate to where you can take his word or take her word, or you just gonna come up with your own story in your head.
Right. And so I think it's important to understand before we get into the whole guilt thing, we got to understand grace, right? And we got to be able to understand that we as men all were raised differently. I was raised completely different than Rome, different than limb, etc., so forth and so on. And with that being said, your upbringing dictates a lot of the decisions you make, right? However, I'm not making excuses. So I want the audience to understand I am not making excuses, but I think you supposed to get better and better as time go on. I'm not the same person that I was at 38, 28, 18. It's all changed. And so my thing is you're supposed to get better with time. You're supposed to grow as a man, grow in responsibility. So even if you make a mistake, and you will make a mistake or two or three or four or five. And once you make the mistake, you got to be able to own your mistake and understand that it was a mistake. We all make them. Because see, the thing is, let's just be honest. Like Ron said, let's just be honest here. If I go in Rome house or if I go in his personal brain, if you will, and I start telling you all the stuff he did in secret that he don't want nobody to know, he would be exposed. He would feel embarrassed. He would feel ashamed. Some guilt in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there because nobody wants to be able to dispose or expose their secrets. So let's start there. Rome. Dig in the closet about the secrets and if they are exposed, how do you feel? Name some adjectives, some things that you feel that you would be feeling if we was to be able to expose, not even you, but somebody else in general. If we was just being able to expose the things that they did wrong in their relationship or personally.
This is good, man. I'll just say this. I'll say that usually for men in particular, I can't speak on the women's behalf, but men's behalf, the downfall of men is usually several things. It could be his pride or his ego, money, women, and the fourth one is what I call substance abuse, whether it's gambling issue, it can be pornography issue, it could be any of those things, drugs, anything that's going to pull you away from your family, your loved one. So with that being said, let's just look at your typical celebrities that's out there right now behind bars. We can use R. Kelly. Would it, the person who was victimized as a child ended up becoming the victimizer as he grew older. So those unaddressed childhood, issues ended up becoming adulthood problems for somebody else.
So let's stop here. This is good, like you said.
Uh-huh.
So let's stop here. So shout out to my man Matt. So he let me hear his podcast right recently, and it made me wonder. So a lot of men struggling with this whole pornography thing, right? Let's stay here, right? A lot of people struggle with this whole pornography thing, right? Is it wrong? Should I be doing this? Does it always lead to masturbation? Is it even good in my relationship? Does it carry on to my marriage? Do I treat my wife like he did the porn star in the movie I was watching? Let me know your thoughts, Romy.
you know, um, the crazy thing about pornography is it's frowned upon when you look at it on a grand scale. It's frowned upon. And so, with that being said, a lot of people are looking at that by looking over the shoulder. Is she coming? Is he coming? Those type of things because it's a shame there. It's like, hey, am I really supposed to be doing this thing? But the reality of it is, when it comes to most of the men per se, what I think ends up happening is either you don't have those real conversations early on. And what I mean by real is the person knowing who you are, the person knowing, they used to call them skeletons in the closet. It's like, hey, I go to the strip club. Hey, because I'll use that as an example. It's so many people that, and this is some women too. Some people think that the strippers is kind of like a dirty, like how could you type of thing. But what some people don't realize is some of those young ladies are doing that to pay themselves, to pay for school. Once they're done with school, they in the game and out of the game. They no longer doing that, at 23, 24, 25. So I look at that with the pornography side. There's a dark side to that only that individual can say if it's an addiction versus him looking at that or her looking at that because they was trying to enhance their relationship. But I'll say this just from knowing what that has versus what you might be dating, you can't expect your wife or your girl or your man to pull off some of those things that you might see in that video, because just because you watch the video don't mean you're going to turn into that overnight. It's like you could take some notes, if you will, but don't think it's going to happen overnight. So I think what happens is knowing when you come into it, this person's drive is 4 days a week. You kind of cool with once a month. Is once a month going to be a problem for him if y'all say I do? Like, that's what I mean by having those real conversations, because if you don't have those conversations, she's used to once a month, you used to 4 times a week. Who's going to win? I think the porn is going to win in that situation, because he's thinking in his mind, I'd rather watch this than to cheat on you physically. That's how he's thinking in his mind. I would rather watch these videos virtually, don't know who that person is, than for me to go out here and do this physically. So it's a cheating, but it's a different form of cheating. You see what I'm
Right.
saying?
I mean, my thing is, I believe it. One leads to the other. I mean, because if you watching the movie of the lady and you found her extremely attractive, so when does it come a time where she more attractive to you than your wife? She's feeling a need. She's feeling a void. Then your girl. Then at the end of the day, your girl don't stand a chance because she can't do the splits like that. She can't flip it over, turn it around, and do a circle like she can't. But you watching Michael Jordan, you can't go out there and do them moves either. So, like my thing is, that's what you really doing. You watching Michael Jordan like you doing in sports, but somehow somebody said this really important thing to me wrong, and I watched. They was like basketball probably the only sport that everybody think they can play. Oh, I think it was Cal Kuzma. He said everybody think they could go out and play basketball because it's a court everywhere outside, but you can't do no other sport like that. He was like, no other sport you could just pick up a football and say, I feel like I could be pro. Let me play football. Let me I feel like I could go run on the track and race everybody. Basketball, the only sport you could go outside and anybody can play. It don't matter. Anybody can play. And so my thing is, as that relates to this whole porn thing, everybody think everybody think they could be Michael Jordan, but there's only one Michael Jordan. And so my thing is, ease up on thinking you the porn star. Let me just say that you've been watching it too long, fella, and this is going from one level to the next, and now you think you Mr. Marcus or whoever is popular right now. So all I'm saying to you is that's leading into the guilt thing, right? So if you watch it, like say for example, you are watching porn and you do feel guilt and shame because you feel like you're doing something wrong, right? Wrong. Tell us how and where you think this guilt or shame is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, man. For those who are Christians, matter of fact, let me say this before I say that. I was at a premier high school, a premier hotel here in Atlanta, and this was back when TD Jakes was doing "Women Art Thou Loose," big things and everything, and conventions. And I remember talking to the hotel owner because of my line of work, and I said, "Hey, man, what do you guys do when it's this many people and everything like that? How do you prepare?" So he was telling me the business side of it, but he said, he said, you wouldn't believe it, but he said, we make more money when we had a Christian events than any other time. And I'm thinking, like, what do you mean by that? I didn't know which angle he was going when he said that. I was like, what do you mean you get more money? I'm like, we all got to pay $2.99 a night. I mean, what are you talking about? He said, no. He said they like to watch the X-rated videos when they come. This is what the man told me. And I'm saying that I was like, so that goes to show that there's people in the church that is ashamed to display what's going on behind the scenes. But when they go on those trips like that, it's like, hey, I could watch this in the comfort of my own room and nobody will know. Nobody will. So that shame is the first thing that you feel, and the guilt. And I'll do a definition thing here in a minute so we can realize what's the difference between shame and guilt. And we also got to put on here before the end of this the book that Pops told us about, that Guilt and Shame book, because that was a powerful book that you and I ended up jumping on immediately. So, shout out to Pops and the elders, because sometimes those elders will pour something into you that you wouldn't realize will bless you more more than ever, because it give you some good scriptures on how to deal with that guilt and that shame.
Shout
Speaking
out to Pops. He'll be 88 tomorrow. Shout out to Pops, man.
Yes,
Bernard
sir.
Richardson. Young Bernard. Go ahead, Romy.
No, I'm about to look up the meaning of guilt first, and then we'll do. So this is coming out of the uh, dictionary. There, it says the fact of having committed a specified or implied offense or crime. So you have that offense, like, okay, you're offending somebody. So I can see how people would feel guilty in the church realm, because you're going to feel like you're offending somebody, let alone God, but others in your church, your pastor and things. So let's see what it says the meaning of shame is on here. And then you can go on to the next one. So the shame says a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So, of course, that would be the case there, because when you're dealing with looking at porn, you feel ashamed. Like, hey, why am I watching this? Why can't I shake this? And when you figure an addiction, I think it's one of those things where you feel like you can't stop. Like, hey, I can't really stop watching this. I find myself watching this X amount of times per day. I find myself watching this X amount of times per week, X amount of times per month. So once people realize there's an addiction, you figure out ways to address it so that you can overcome it. And so the shame and the guilt definitely comes about because people have their own personal values, morals, and beliefs. And if people feel that it's going to be frowned upon, it brings upon that shame and guilt.
Mm. Okay, so let's go into this whole guilt trip thing in relationships, right? And when your significant other brings up your past mistakes over and over again, you can feel a sense of guilt, right? And so, how do you feel you should deal with that, wrong in a relationship where she said, some of your past mistake? I remember you emailed Bridget, and when we first met, I remember you sent all those nasty emails to Bridget, and I saw it and I caught you. What's your response?
You know, that's always the difficult one, because for the woman, they take that hurt and that pain really, really, serious, and they keep recounting that in their head. You know, it's kind of like somebody that just can't let they can say I can verbally say I forgive you, but there's certain things that you can't forget. And if you do any little thing, it could be you making a turn in the car. Did you make that turn with her? Did you take her here to this restaurant? Did you do so? A lot of times you have to especially if you're married or you're engaged, if you feel the relationship is worth valuing and saving, those people will be the ones to do whatever it takes, whatever it takes to get over that hump, because sometimes just deleting the person out of your phone, Put it in the camera here. Sometimes deleting the person out of your phone, that may not be enough. Sometimes you getting off of social media is not enough. Sometimes, sometimes you could do all that you think would actually work, and that may not be the case. I think what happens is um, healing comes through time. One person, it might take them 2 years to heal. Another person, it may be 5 to 10 years before that person really overcome that. And so the initial thing is when that person calms down and cool off, the best bet is to probably encourage her and the individual to go to counseling, because as a man you definitely don't want to hear the constant, like you said earlier, if not having that grace period. If you don't have any type of grace, you can say, hey, I won't forget this. But if every time we go out, you got to bring that individual's name up. If every time, we're doing something, you can't let it go, you can't get past it, it will hinder and put you guys, relationship in the strain, because you won't be able to take it to the next level. Even with your explanations, like, hey, I did XYZ because of XYZ. But if she's not letting it go, it's kind of like sometimes you just got to let that thing play out how it's going to play out, good, bad, or indifferent.
I love it.
It's got to play out.
So what happens when in the relationship they bring up old favors that they did? Remember, I did this for you. You ain't do this for me.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the hard one, because when I call it, you starting to count the things that you done for me, and I always look at, if you really love me, you shouldn't be counting the things that you done. It's kind of like now we breaking out a calculator. we ringing up, our acts of service and the way that we love one another. I think that's the wrong way to go about things in a relationship. The best thing to do in a relationship is to just have open communication. Like I said, if you're a person that know you love to go to strip clubs, when you meet this person, you might want to tell that person that. It's not, you don't want that person to be hit with that type of information later on, so they can have all of these crazy thoughts in their mind, like, oh, this person slept with them, and things like that. Little do some people out there realize, some people go to the strip club strictly for the food. I kid you not. This has nothing against that man's masculinity. It's just the reality of it is the place has some really good food. Yeah, they might shoot the breeze in there while they talk to the people, but they
Lemon
got
pepper Lou. They call them lemon pepper Lou. For those that don't know, that man Lou Williams, shout out to Lou Williams, man, basketball player. He left the bubble when they had the NBA finals or playoffs in the bubble. He left to go to Magic City, the strip club. They said, man, what you doing in Magic City? Man, I just went to go get some lemon pepper wings. And from then on, they called my man Lemon Pepper Lou. And matter of fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, I don't know because I ain't been there in a while, but I think they actually put that on the menu. It's called lemon pepper Lou. That's what the wings called now. Shout out to Lou Williams. Go ahead, Roman.
hey, shout out to Lou Will, man. No, what was the next point? I know it was another one you was gonna
Well,
touch
no,
on.
I'm gonna wrap this thing up so we could go on a different level of how to deal with the guilt. I want to say guilt is a natural human emotion. I want y'all to be able to understand that, but it's not a good reason to stay in a relationship and compromise your happiness, right? I don't care how guilty you feel about not being with your kids or not making your wife happy or doing all of this, right? You got to be able to understand guilt should not keep you in no relationship. You should be able to understand what true, real happiness is. And guess what? Happiness sometimes is selfish and choosing yourself, especially if you one of these people that always doing stuff for other people. Sometimes you got to choose yourself. And guess what? Your kid, because you can't be good to your kids or your wife or your girlfriend or the girl on the side, if that's what you do, if you not good to yourself. You always got to be true to your own self. What is true happiness? And once you figure that out, it'll be a little bit easier to deal with other people and try to make them happy. But sometimes you got to make your own self happy. And so that means sometimes you got to put your needs in front of your kids. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Sometimes you got to put your needs in front of your kids' needs, huh? In order to give them, a better life. And so now let's switch gears, Roman. Tell us, we're going to go through how to deal with guilt. How do we deal with guilt?
I think the first thing to anything, especially when you're dealing with guilt, is identifying the source. Where did this come from? If you have an addiction to porn, where did that come from? When did it start? Realize how far that thing goes back. If we're looking at the monster, they always say you want to grab that monster by the head because that's the only way you're going to take this thing out. So you always want to get to the root of where this thing stemmed from. When did it all start? Once you identify that, the next thing is, what's going to be the resolution? How do I overcome this? And you start looking into things to get help out there. There's a lot of different sources that you can reach out to when it comes to porn specifically, but it could be gambling. You may have a gambling issue. They got a number for that. If you know that you're pretty much putting your mortgage, your car note, you putting everything on that parlay. I got to hit that parlay so we can pay this and pay. If you that far into this thing, you might want to go and get some help because the mortgage and the car note is not going anywhere, and you can't rely on a gamble for it to hit every single month to pay things off. So I think it's the identifying, and then it's the recognizing you need help. Throwing up the hand like you would be in school. Hey, I need some help, and then coming to that resolution, whatever that is. If it's a group, um, that you got to go to and you got to discuss things openly because sometimes doing things behind the closed doors you're able to hide a lot more, but once you got to do it into the open it holds you accountable. So it's having those accountability partners to do those things. I know I was speaking to someone once that had to do some courses for AA, and to this day, that individual still goes to those AA courses to help other individuals. So although they overcame, they go back to help other people who's dealing with alcoholism and things like that. So I call that a selfless act, and you going out there and you just deny yourself to help others overcome just like yourself. And I feel like there's a category for everybody. If you overcame something, you can help some other brothers and sisters out there that's going through those things.
I love it. I love it. Matter of fact, if you I speak to a lot of people that are going through the NA program, and it's something that's ongoing. In fact, I don't know if y'all know this. I found out something. The people that was once addicted to drugs, do you know they can't even have a sip of alcohol? That is considered an addiction as well, because what they teach you is your addiction has the ability to spread. So it started off with crack, and now I go to cigarettes, or now I go to liquor, or now I go to this, or now I go to that. And you got to be able to be careful because addiction is, contagious. And so you can always bring that into different aspects of your life. And so I think that's crazy because we all should be taught that. Forget it in a class, we all should be taught about addiction. And I think, just like Rome said, we should identify the problem. So even if it is something you feel guilty about, you got to be able to expose that thing. Let me say it, I'm going to call it for what it is. Whatever it is, it takes confidence to expose the secret. Because once it's out there, it ain't no secret no more. With the enemy, with somebody that's trying to hold it over your head, your wife, your girlfriend, your kids. Once I exposed that thing, yeah, I did it, and what? That, so what? I did it and I moved past that. And once you do that, it's so freeing. It's so you feel free from being able to expose what it is somebody is trying to put guilt and shame on you. Hence, once you read this book, we're gonna throw up here, you will be able to get some piece uh, of knowledge and being able to feel peaceful once you feel free. And it's the name of this book is called Freedom of Guilt and Shame. And so that's what I'm saying. Once you expose this thing and understand not what the world or not what people say that you are, but who does God say I am? Huh? And so once you start getting that in your spirit that God called me a peculiar person, and he said I'm above and not beneath, I'm the lender and not the borrower. Once you really start let that get in your spirit, then it's kind of like, especially when you start, it's the scripture that also say, if God be for me, who can be against me? So it's kind of like once you start quoting stuff like that, who are you wrong to say who I'm not? Who is Stephen A. Smith to say what I can't do? If God say I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So my thing is, these are the type of weapons you need to be able to pull out your arsenal to be able to fight a lot of this guilt and shame you may be dealing with. And so for me, all I'm trying to do is give somebody hope that you can deal with this guilt and shame that you may be feeling. You are not your mistake. Yes, you made a mistake, but that's not who you are. That's why I could never understand, Romy, when you go to the NA classes and they say, "Hey, I'm Carlos and I'm an alcoholic or I'm a drug addict." No, that ain't what God said I am. So I ain't about to say that in front of no class. My name is Carlos and I'm above and not beneath. You know, my name is Carl. I'm a child of God. My name is Carlos and I'm rich and he made me wonderful. You know, I'm gonna say that, but you ain't about to hit me say, "My name is Carlos and I'm a porn addict." Or my name is Carlos and I'm addicted to women. My name is Carlos, I'm a cheater. My name is Carlos, that ain't who God said I am. So all I'm trying to get somebody out here that's listening to understand is you are not your mistake. Look yourself in the mirror, apologize to, ask for repentance to whoever you believe in. And then at the end of the day, you look in the mirror and you ask for forgiveness. You got to forgive yourself. T.I. had a song me, Suge, and Rome talk about is, look, Ma, I got my own. Sometimes you got to forgive yourself. Sometimes you got to forgive yourself, is what I'm saying. You got to forgive yourself. And so T.I. got a song called Still Ain't Forgave Myself. You got to forgive yourself. What you got for us, Rome?
Hey, that was good, man. That was real good. Like you said, when you speak of words of encouragement, you know, I too question how they go about those methods. Um, here in Atlanta, I actually been a part of this association. Some of the people there are drug addicts. They faced alcoholism, um, all different types of things, and it's all men. And so one of the things they have you do is they have you shave your head like in a hazing thing. And I said, well, what's the purpose of them having to shave their head? Like, what does that have to do with the program? And they said, well, we just want to strip them of everything and realize there's a unison here. You know, we all in this together. And so we want to take away, you know, like some people they big on, you know, they haircuts and things like this. So we want to take away all of that, and we want you to focus on the program itself. And everybody has responsibilities of cleaning, the different things like that. So there, what I did, like they didn't have them announce themselves and say, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic," or this, and this. You go around the room, you introduce yourself as the guest, and you know it was just good to be around them, hearing the different stories, and you just say, man, like you could have easily went down one of these roads had you not made the right choices in certain situations. So life is about choices and decisions. All it takes is 1 second, one moment for you to make option B your right answer, but overall it's the wrong answer, and it may not just affect you, it may affect the others that's in your life. So when you start looking at things like that, it just start putting things into perspective. And like you said, you know, you have to realize at the end of the day, for those who believe that you're a child of God, and that, you know, at the end of the day, you got to realize that it gives you a spirit of power and authority, not of fear and doubt, self-doubt, and all of those different things that you can go down. And, sometimes we get caught up in life focusing on our jobs, focusing on our spouse, focusing on our kids. But I know we got a lot going on with the airlines right now around the world. But one thing that I always stand on, and I always tell everybody that I like to hear when they start giving you those safety concerns, as we can see, those things are real serious to pay attention to now when emergency happens. It tells you if we lose air pressure in the cabin, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first before assisting your kids. In this life that we live, you can't help me, you can't help Los, you can't help your spouse, your kids, your sister, your brother, your mom, your dad without helping yourself first. So that's what this is all about. It's about realizing that you need the help and making sure that you taking that time out to invest that oxygen in yourself to get better and to move along and move forward. So, doing those proper steps, picking up that phone, making that call, telling one of your loved ones that know, the right things to do, but you definitely have to identify it and, like you said, bring it in front of somebody so that you can get the proper help.
I love it. And let me say this, man. Stop apologizing. I just want to throw that out there. Stop apologizing if you feel guilty of your anxiety or the way that you were treated or the way you were raised or some of your insecurities. Stop apologizing. I want you to be able to accept it. Yes, I'm dealing with anxiety, but I don't have anxiety. If that make any sense. I'm dealing with anxiety, but I don't have anxiety because that's not what God said you had, right? Now you might be dealing with some anxious feelings. But Rome, tell us what the Bible said about being anxious
Be anxious for nothing.
and what you're supposed to do instead.
Hey, pray always.
Right. Okay, so all I'm saying to you is, and that's biblical principles, right? And my thing is, it's applicable to everyday life. What I'm trying to do, Los and Rome, we just trying to give you some hope to let you understand that we all been there. You ain't there by yourself feeling guilty, feeling shameful of something you did or something you said or how you was raised. But my thing is, in order to stop feeling guilt and shame, you gotta feel confident. But it ain't short confidence though. You got to be able to feel confident in what God is, who He is, and the peace that He gave in you and who you are to be able to move forward. So you got to be able to believe that you are more than enough, huh? With or without that person. If that person ain't there for you tomorrow, huh? God's still gonna be there. And that's the bottom line. And you need to feel peace. Peace that surpasses all understanding. And I gave y'all a lot of heat from Big Mama, so I ain't got to throw no Big Mama isms in there. But the one thing I want to say before Rome hit you with your closing remarks is I had this idea. I got to throw it out here so y'all can hold me accountable to it. It's this challenge I saw on IG, Rome, where they had one of the young people come that's like a teenager, and then they hit you with all the Big Mama isms, and they had to kind of complete the sentence. Everything that glitter, and then she supposed to be able to finish it. But they gotta say whatever come to their mind once they hear the beginning of the Big Mama isms. So I want to be able to do that in a few weeks to be able to grab somebody young and go over all the statements that Big Mama used to say and see how embarrassing it is and see if they can finish it from beginning to end. But what's your closing remarks, Romy?
Hey, you touched on some things. Hold on, go ahead. I what I think is at the end of the day, um, I feel like there's a great story person in the Bible, which is Paul. I feel like his background is probably one of the biggest conversions when it comes from being completely on the opposite side. He was basically, in our terms today, it would be considered like a hitman out there because he pretty much ridiculed, watched different followers of Christ be murdered and killed and called for that to happen. And the Lord said, why are you but persecute me in this way. And then he looking like, wow. So he had 3 days where they said he had scales on his eyes. But there's a part that stands out to me in the Bible, in particular about Paul. He said he had a thorn in his side. And
Mm.
he said that, he wanted the Lord to remove that from him. So that was a moment where whatever that is that he was dealing with, that guilt, that shame, he asked the Lord, hey, remove this feeling from me because I'm a great follower of yours, but I don't need to have this while I'm following you. And you know what the Lord responded to him? He said, my grace is sufficient enough. So at the end of the day, if we think we're going to be perfect on this earth, it won't happen. That's just not how it's going to be. There's some things you're going to deal with, young man, young woman, old woman. Um, you, and I say that respectfully, you are going to have some things that you're going to deal with until we leave the face of this earth. So at the end of the day, keep God in your forefront if you're a believer. And if you don't believe in God, that's fine too, because that's your walk. But at the end of the day, if God is telling me that his grace is sufficient, we have to ask for forgiveness. We have to do certain things. But I always question myself, like, well, what is it that, Paul was dealing with? And me personally, it's just my personal opinion. It's not in the Bible. I personally think Paul's biggest thing when he was Saul, he never lost his killer instinct, even on the Christian side. I feel like when he's seen people disrespect God, when he's seen people disrespecting other saints, I feel like that killer instinct he always had something in the back of his mind where he wanted to do something to them. And it's not in the Bible. That's just the way I take it, because what else would he would have want to remove? He didn't choose to be married, and none of those things. But my take on this topic today is, if you out there and you're dealing with anything, and it's a problem, it can be detrimental to your household. It can be detrimental to yourself. Definitely tell someone, your confidant, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your mom, whether it's your dad, your brother, your sister, maybe a coworker. But get the help that you need so that you can get the resolution to the road to recovery. That's my take.
I love it. Man, it's gonna be short and sweet. I want you to acknowledge the issue, accept it. Being able to accept it, accept your mistakes, practicing, stop practicing self comparison. This Instagram stuff could be the devil. Facebook, TikTok, all of that, YouTube, it could be the devil, man. And what I mean by the devil is when you see other people doing something you want to do, you start feeling guilty and shameful about how that could be your life and where you should be at this age. Or stop it, man. You exactly where you need to be at this moment. Keep working hard like the rest of us. Stop trying to take the shortcut and cut the line. Keep going. And like Rome said, if you don't believe me, go read the children of Israel story in the beginning of the Bible. It took them 40 years to get somewhere they could have been in 2 weeks. Be patient, man. Sit still and stay in your position, stay in your lane, and God will provide. That's my last words. I cannot wait till next time I see y'all. I'm ready for y'all. I got some interviews lined up. And I'm gonna be doing some real interviews. I need y'all here in the questions and the comment section. It's going up, man. We got great things coming in 2025. So we pray for y'all all, and we can't wait to see y'all again. Until next time.
Have a good night.